So we're going to continue on with the lesson from yesterday about graphing lines. Now, you guys need to get out your notes and write this down. And you're going to practice with me as we do these problems. So you're going to be given equations. For example, you might be given y equals 2x plus 1, and you have to graph that. Now, in order to graph it, I want you to make a table, x and y on both sides. Okay, so you should be writing this down in your notes. And then you're going to plug in points for x. Now, you get to pick those points. Remember how we talked about that yesterday? You're plugging in points for x, but it's always a good idea to look at what you're multiplying by. Here, I'm just multiplying by 2. So whatever you pick here is fine. But remember, if this is a fraction, you want to pick a number that can be divided by the bottom number. So because I just have a 2, I'm going to pick 0, 1, and 2. And this is what I would do, is 0, 1, and 2 each time. I want you to pick 3 points. If you want to try some negative numbers, you can. If you want to do a little bit bigger, but that's fine. But remember, you have to graph them, so you want to make sure that you don't run out of graph paper. So you're going to plug in 3 numbers. Here I'm picking 0, 1, and 2. And so I'm going to start with 0. So what I do is I take this and I plug it in. So I've got 2 times 0 plus 1. And 2 times 0 is 0 plus 1. That gives me 1. So that means I need to put 1 in my table. And this means that I have the point 0, 1 that I'm going to graph. We're going to do this for all 3. So then I plug in 1. So I've got 2 times 1 plus 1. And 2 times 1 is 2, so I've got 2 plus 1, that's 3. So I put 3 on my table, so that means I'm going to graph the point 1, 3. And then I'm going to plug in 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, and then we add 1. 4 plus 1 is 5. So we get 5 for the y value, so that means I'm going to graph the point 2, 5. Okay, so that's always your first step, is to make a table. 3 points, usually 0, 1, and 2, unless the number in front of x is a fraction. Then you want to pick better numbers that can be divided by that. So let's try one with actual graphing. You'll all need graph paper. So you might have to hit pause so that you can get some graph paper for everybody. And so we're going to graph y equals x plus 2. So once again, we make a table. And now we have to do the math. And notice I don't have a number in front of x, so I can go with 0, 1, and 2. Those are the numbers I would suggest you go with, are 0, 1, and 2. And now you're going to plug those numbers in for x. So y equals 0 plus 2. So that means y equals 2. So that means when x is 0, y is 2. So we can graph that point. That's going to be 0, 2, right? X is 0, y is 2. So I can graph that point on my xy axis. If I'm ahead of you too much, you might have to hit pause until everybody gets caught up. Then I'm going to plug in 1. So plug in 1 for x. And 1 plus 2 is 3. So then we put 3 there, and that means I'm going to graph the point 1, 3. So we go over, x is 1, y is 3. That is not 3, people. 3. Okay, and then we have our last one, y equals 2 plus 2, so I get y equals 4. So that means I'm going to graph the point 2, 4, and there it is. Once you have your 3 points graphed, I want you then to draw a nice line. And there is the graph of y equals x plus 2. Let's do another one. Let's do one that has a fraction. So y equals 1/3 x minus 1. All right, so I make my table. And now this time I have to pay attention to the fact that I'm multiplying by 1/3, which means I'm dividing by 3. So now I need to pick numbers here that can be divided by 3. So let's see here. 0 is always good. I always plug in 0. You can always plug in 0. And then 1 isn't divisible by 3, and 2 isn't divisible by 3. How about 3? And then my next number that's divisible by 3 is 6. So let's plug in 0. So that means I have 1/3 times 0 plus 1. Remember how much I love 0? 1/3 times 0 is 0. And 0 plus 1 is 1. So that means that we are going to now graph the point 0, 1. X is 0, y is 1. Okay, once again, if I get too far ahead of you, you're going to have to hit pause. So now I plug in 3, so I got 1/3 times 3 plus, minus. Uh-oh. Did you guys notice that before? This is a minus 1, not a plus 1. So I totally messed up. It should be minus 1, so 0 minus 1 is -1. So that means my problem is -1 here, so my y-intercept is -1. All right, let's see if I can catch up now. So I have 1/3 times 3. Well, 1/3 times 3, 3 divided by 3 is 1. And 1 minus 1 is 0. So that means when x is 3, y is 0. So I'm going to have to graph that point, 3, 0. And then I have one more to plug in. 1/3 times 6 minus 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And 2 minus 1 is 1. So that means I'm going to graph the point 6, 1. And there it is, and I'll draw the line. Okay, so you guys get the idea. This is how you're going to do it every single time. Just plug in 3 points, usually 0, and then 2 others. Okay, now, in this lesson you're also supposed to learn about special lines. Alright, so special lines. Now, we talked yesterday that you're always going to see x and y in your problem, and then you'll see other numbers, and that's how you know that it is linear. Unless you have a special one. Now, a special one might consist of just y equals a number. Notice there's no x whatsoever. So here's how I want you to think about that. X can be anything, and y is always going to be 2. This is the rule. Y is 2, no matter what x is. So x could be 1 and y is 2. X could be 2 and y is 2. X could be 3 and y is 2. And so all of a sudden we have our table, you guys. It's actually not all that bad. As long as you remember that when you see y equals 2 or y equals a number, x can be anything, because x is not in your equation at all. X could be anything. So I go to my graph, and I graph those points. X is 1, y is 2, x is 2, y is 2, x is 3, y is 2. And look at what I have. I have a line going straight across, it's flat, horizontal. And that is how you graph that kind of line. That's not the only special one. But just like that one, if you have x equals -3, notice there is just an x, there is no y whatsoever, so that means y could be anything, but x is always -3. So y could be 1, x is -3. Y could be 2, x is -3. Y could be 3, x is -3. So then we graph that. X is -3, y is 1. X is -3, y is 2. X is -3, y is 3. And we have a vertical line now going straight up and down, a vertical line. And these are special lines. So you're going to have to be able to graph those, but we do the same thing. We make the table, we just make it special. So we have 3 types of lines, right? We have y equals a number times x plus a number. Okay, that's where you pick 3 different numbers for x, plug it in and see what you get. You have y equals a number, And that's where you say x is anything, y is always that number, and make a table. And we have x equals a number, and that's where you're saying that y is anything, but x is always that number, and you get a special straight up and down line. Okay, so your assignment will be given to you, and I want you to do the best you can. You'll need graph paper, and I will see you on Monday, hopefully, if all my children are healthy. All right, have a good weekend.